Good morning and welcome to Health Talk here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXPX. My name is Paul Thomas, and sitting across from me every Wednesday morning is Bill Kearney of North Lake Medical Pharmacies, and we survived.
We did.
The Thanksgiving
I didn't
holiday.
even gain any weight.
You know what's funny is I actually, in the shower this morning, got my wedding ring off for the first time in years, so maybe I lost weight. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually lost a pound, and I tell you, I ate all day long on Thanksgiving Day because we started out with breakfast and then snacks and then more. Everybody brought hors d'oeuvres, and we didn't eat till about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and of course, you know, you're cutting the turkey and you're picking, and we had ham, and by the time we sat down for Thanksgiving dinner, I wasn't even hungry.
You weren't hungry,
you know?
I get
so
that.
I loaded up with some potatoes and gravy and some dressing and just a couple of little pieces of turkey and cranberry. I had a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
One of my granddaughters made macaroni and cheese with bacon in it, and that's one of my favorites. But I just took a small teaspoonful, and then had a great weekend. I went to the Rockland area with my twin daughters, and we had family from all over, and everybody got along, and no big fights, and it wasn't like the movies at all. You know, it was watched football games and came home on Saturday and started decorating for Christmas. We have
already? Wow.
7 Christmas trees so far. And I've been going to the shed every day since Saturday, bringing the load back. And this is probably our last hurrah because Dan has got a new knee and doesn't have the fervor and energy that she normally would have to complete this Christmas spectacular that we have, mostly inside. Last year I had broken my femur, and so I didn't do the outside, and a lot of those things from outside seem to have disappeared. So
really interesting.
I don't know where they went, but there's still plenty of boxes in there. So anyway, we're looking forward to. We're leaving. We have to record a show this week sometime, and I have a meeting in St. Simon Islands outside of Georgia next Wednesday. We fly in on Tuesday and we get back on Saturday. So it is. The time of year where we did Small Business Saturday on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and I guess the Main Street Association, which I'm part of, does really nothing for the 11th Street area and for our area.
Yeah.
And I guess the weather was really bad.
The weather was pretty bad, and you know, it's kind of. I felt bad for the local merchants and the Dickens Fair was going on.
Yeah.
Because the rain was so hard, and we came down here for the Dickens Fair around 11 when it opened, and there was like nobody down there. And then we went and did some things and drove by again at around 1, and the rain was still coming down, and it still nobody there. And we debated on coming back for the tree lighting, and we just kind of said, no, you know, we're not going to. It's just still raining too hard. So unfortunately, I think the weather really knocked that event out. But you know, and without a lot of people down here, I'm sure the businesses down here suffered. And if they're not promoting you guys out in the, you know, out in the other locations,
that's always been an issue. And I'm not bad-mouthing the Main Street Association, but I do a lot of sponsoring for downtown Lakeport, and it doesn't do me any good on Lakeport Boulevard or 11th Street, and that's ever since I've been in the Bruno's location. We've always had that discussion. But even though the weather was terrible, it's never a good. I mean, we were giving out hot chocolate and apple cider and cookies and giving 20% off on gifts and medical supplies and those kind of things, but. You don't ever stop trying. If I'd have done that, I'd have been out of business a long time ago. So anyway, we're into the Christmas season now, and it's time to get out the credit card and be jolly. And
is that the word? Is it jolly? That keeps you going?
When you're built like I am, you know, it's Santa Claus, ho, ho, ho. And, no more gobbling again, and so it's time for the milk and hot cookies when we come down the chimney if I can still fit. So, but we talk about healthcare, and one of the big things that's going to be over on next week is the Medicare D thing. So if you haven't looked at your plans yet, you have until next Wednesday to convert from a plan you already have, and there's a huge amount of people that are converting to another plan. And one of the things, I was looking at the New York Times yesterday, and there was an article in there about a sick calculation about prescription drugs. And they were giving an example about a person who was diagnosed with diabetes, and his insulin prescription 2 years ago cost him $40 a month. Now it's $650.
Oh, my goodness.
And insulin has been out for years. This isn't anything new. And people blame drug companies for this dilemma, but the firms producing the insulin aren't making money. It's the prices are getting lower, but the PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, the extra cash is instead landing in the pockets of those. There's only three pharmacy business management companies left. CVS Caremark is one of them. Express Script is the largest one, and Optum Rx is the other one. And what's happening, they determine which medicines are covered and what copay or insurance level for 210 Americans' health plans, and they're abusing the role to get the enormous profits. This cost of decreasing in the cost of medications is supposed to give the patient a better cost. The gatekeeper role gives pharmacy benefit managers enormously bargaining power to medicines in bulk. So the three PBMs dominate 70% of the market, and pharmaceutical companies know they will not be able to access millions of patients unless they accommodate the demands of the PBMs. So with that disappropriate negotiating power, which CVS Caremark is one of the top three, and Express Scripts and Optum, they coerce pharmaceutical companies into offering substantial discounts and rebates. Nothing wrong with that, but in theory, they do patients a great service by securing lower drug prices. The problem is they rarely pass that rebate they wrench away from drug companies along to pharmacies, insurers, or patients. Instead, the PBMs hoard the cash. Express Scripts is the nation's largest PBM, boasted a market cap of $43 billion in early November. That's increased its profit per adjusted prescription 500% since 2003. So don't blame the pharmacy. Don't really blame the drug company, except for those exceptional drug companies like the EpiPen manufacturer. But the Express Scripts, the CVS Caremark, and the Optum Rx, which own 70% of the pharmacy benefit managers, are maximizing their negotiating leverage and thus their rebates by refusing to cover dozens of life-saving drugs. You'll see about the people with MS, the people with cancer. If you get cancer today, you're broke. Combined, the top two PBMs in the country deny coverage to 239 medications. That's CVS, Caremark, and Express Scripts. So when they decrease coverage, the patients suffer. There's 400,000 Americans with multiple sclerosis, which, if you're not aware of that, it's a neurological disease for the immune system. It causes pain and fatigue and a lack of muscle control. CVS Health, the nation's second largest PBM, excludes 3 top MS treatments in order to pressure the makers of other treatments into steeper discounts. That's dangerous for multiple sclerosis patients, but whose doctors prescribe one of those 3 treatments to help manage their disease. When they aren't covered by a PBM, many patients give up and stop taking the medications. What happens is they end up suffering for the rest of their life rather than appeal for an exemption. One study examining 60,000 Americans found that when the PBMs excluded drugs, almost half the patients simply stopped taking these medications. We're not talking about a disease that makes you feel kind of bad. We're talking about losing muscle control, being able to speak, being able to ambulate or walk. Patients who fail to take those medications often develop complications, and they end up in the emergency room or the hospital, and then that drives up the overall healthcare costs by billions. Actually, one of the figures that I found really disturbing was the non-adherence, or those people's failure to get those medication, ends up in the United States for 125,000 people dying a year. If that was in a war or that was any other cause, this cause happens to be preventable. The PBM managers are supposed to negotiate big rebates on drug prices, and they do, but they're keeping the money instead of passing on the discounts to the patients or the pharmacies. When people across the nation either can't access life-saving drugs or must shell out a fortune to do so, excuse me, it's time to ask who exactly benefits from pharmacy benefit managers. This was in the New York Times yesterday, and it came through its Investors Business Daily, and it came through the National Community Pharmacy Association's news line. So along that line, Paul and I had just been talking about Alzheimer's and how prevalent it is, and if any of you watched 60 Minutes on Sunday with Leslie Stahl, there was an article about Alzheimer's in Medellin, Colombia, which is where the cartel originated from years ago. And there was a community in the mountains around there where residents may be the key to figuring out the disease that someday could be preventable. And that's because the largest concentration in the world of people who carry a rare genetic mutation that makes them 100% certain to develop early on-stage Alzheimer's. It's a cruel version of the disease that strikes people in their mid-40s and leads to death about a decade later. Now, we think about Alzheimer's and dementia as something that happens in your 70s and 80s. These people are dying in their 40s and 50s, and it's all in one family. What people don't realize is that to qualify to participate in this, you have to be from this family. And one Colombian family who lost their father to the disease, giving each of the 7 children a 50% chance of suffering the same fate. Now, you can imagine knowing that there's a 50-50 chance that you're going to die of Alzheimer's at an early age. And now the children and several hundred of their extended family members are helping scientists by participating in a drug trial ran by the Banner Alzheimer's Institute in Phoenix. They got $15 million from one source, another $15 million from another source, and the National Institute of Health is supporting this program. Because scientists can determine exactly who in the group will get the disease in the community in Medellin, perhaps that makes a perfect laboratory for drug trials. Scientists are working with them to test drugs that could someday, they hope, prevent Alzheimer's before it begins. The first step is for the participants to be tested for the gene mutation. It's in a gene on chromosome 14, but the results of the genetic tests are secret. Now, what they're finding out is if you have amyloid plaques, and these are protein plaques that we think is what causes Alzheimer's. We've always thought it has before. And it affects these white amyloid plaques, affects transmission from the nerve ending from the brain to the pathway to the brain. And so when you get somebody who, and they gave examples, and these family members were crying. One of the younger sons said, my brother said he could put on his pants or his shirt by himself. He didn't need help. And he said, I gave him his shirt, and he stepped into it as if he was putting on a pair of pants, and he started crying. And you can imagine being in a family. The first step is for them to be tested for the gene mutation. There's no cure, but what they're doing is trying to find a vaccine or a drug that can dissolve those amyloid plaques. One thing they found out was these amyloid plaques that we don't even start looking for until people start losing their memory this way form 10 years before they actually develop symptoms. Now, in this study, it's a double-blind study. Half of the people are getting the medication to dissolve those plaques. Half of those people are getting a placebo, a drug that doesn't do anything. They've all agreed to do this. The people that are giving the shot every 2 weeks do not know whether they're giving the active drug or another drug that just has a placebo effect. There's nothing really that works even to slow the disease down right now, very, very little. So why tell somebody that they're going to get the disease when there's nothing that can be done for them? So it seems inhumane not to tell them, but how would you feel if you were born and you knew that one of the daughters of this family said, and she's a beautiful girl, said, "I will not have children." She says, "There's a 50% chance that I will not be able to take care of them, and I can't allow myself to do that." Late in Alzheimer's, before the most common form of the disease is not caused by a gene mutation later on. So there's no test definitely if a person will develop it. There's a test to determine if they have that gene that indicates a greater risk. After watching his mother die from this disease, Scott Stave, which is a retired physical therapist in Phoenix, opted to take the test. He said, "I decided to either continue to live the life of fear or I can find out. As it is, turns out I have the worst possible results." And seeing this was overwhelming emotionally, to see this family with the biggest concentration of Alzheimer's disease in the world, and knowing that half of them will die at an early age. The study goes on until 2021. It's a 5-year study. By the time of 2021, half of those people will have developed Alzheimer's, and they will develop it at an early age. Very sad. The amount of people in America is over 5 million that have Alzheimer's disease. It's the 6th leading cause of death in the United States, and the only one without a way to prevent or slow down its progression. When watching this, I watched the drama of the families finding out, and the second part of Leslie Stahl's presentation was on drug trials to prevent Alzheimer's. And I wasn't going to watch that. I thought, well, this is just another one. But I watched what they were doing, and I watched the willingness of this concentration of families to stop the pain that this disease is causing. And a lot of us, a lot of you that listen to us on the radio are what we call mature adults, only a little further than that. And we're all, a lot of us are past that age where they normally get Alzheimer's disease and pass away. Remember, they get it in their 30s or 40s, and then a decade later, they're gone. And it is terrible to see, terrible to experience in a whole generation after generation after generation. We do not have that gene present in this country right now, but we have everything that goes along with it. So if this is effective and we are able to dissolve those amyloid plaques, then we will be successful in doing something about Alzheimer's. What we hope is that it will dissolve those amyloid plaques, and in the end, we'll be able to have a cure for Alzheimer's. But what we're going to, what happens if we dissolve the amyloid plaques and the people still have Alzheimer's? Then we have to turn around and try something else. But it's a fantastic opportunity to treat this disease. I can't remember how this family was discovered, but it's an optimum opportunity for the families, as well as an optimum opportunity for the National Institute of Health and the Banner Group out of Phoenix to try something that we may have a cure for Alzheimer's in the future. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Obamacare, what should stay and what should go, and about over-the-counter medicines for kids. Hi, I'm Bill Kearney from Northlake Medical Pharmacy. Recently, I visited Mrs. Goodwin's third grade class at Lakeport Elementary School to answer some of the students' questions about their health. Here's what they had to ask.
Why do I sneeze a lot when I'm around tall grass?
That's because you have a grass allergy. Your body is trying to get rid of the allergen or the pollen in the grass that makes you sneeze. You may also get itchy eyes and runny nose because of the allergy. Northlake Medical Pharmacy, a good neighbor pharmacy, is offering a Healthy Kids free vitamin program to the kids of Lake County. Any child aged 2 to 12 can receive a free 30-day supply of children's chewable multivitamins every month for a year. Simply sign up your children at either of our 2 locations at 347 Lakeport Boulevard in front of the Bruno's Shop Smart. Call 263-1328. Or at 5136 Hill Road East across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital. Call 263-6192. The Healthy Kids free vitamin program at Northlake Medical Pharmacies.
They're good for us.
I believe that home is where your pet is, and that loving an animal means never giving up on them, never letting them go.
I believe that when you adopt an animal from a shelter, you are saving not only one, but many lives.
And that when you spay or neuter your dogs and cats, you help decrease the number of homeless animals.
I believe it's time we do all we can to save the lives of homeless dogs and cats who are counting on us, because every dog and cat deserves a place to call home.
I believe that I found my best friend in a shelter, and that you can too. I'm Lisa Edelstein. I believe.
I'm Emmy Lou Harris. I believe.
I'm James Avery. I believe.
I'm Travis Clark. We believe that together with Best Friends Animal Society,
We can bring about a time when there are no more homeless pets.
please visit our website at ambassadors.bestfriends.org to find out more.
You, my friend, have connections in the government. 1-800-FED-INFO, the official source for all government information. And like any good connection, there's no telling where it can take you. Why, one day you're getting student loan information, next thing you know, you need job hunting tips. So whether you have information to get or ideas to give your government, call 1-800-FED-INFO. Who knows? Money-saving tips today could lead to retirement planning tomorrow.
Imagine crossing a street busy with traffic. Against the light.
Watch where you're going!
Wearing a blindfold. Would you do this? Probably not. It's one risk obviously not worth taking. Some risks aren't as obvious, yet could be just as deadly, like the risk for type 2 diabetes. If you're overweight or over 45, if you're not very active, or don't eat as healthy as you should, there's an easy test you can take to find out your risk. It's free, and in less than a minute, you'll know if you're at risk for this deadly disease. Just go to diabetes.org/take-the-test or call 1-800-DIABETES. Because type 2 diabetes is one risk you can't afford to take. Take the diabetes risk test and stop diabetes before it stops you. A message from the American Diabetes Association.
All right, we're back.
Yeah, Paul and I were talking about Obamacare and some of the covered California things on the break, and he has a part of that plan, and it's been very confusing on what it's going to be in the future. So if you have it, make sure you call your insurance company and find out what it is, and if they're not definitive, force them to be definitive and find out exactly what it is. Like I've told you before, you're the aggressor on your health insurance now. Nobody else is going to search for you, so you need to do it yourself. But Americans are divided on really what should happen next. You know, Trump said that was the first thing he was going to do. 1/3 of the voters polled said they want it repealed, and only and 1/3 of them say they want it left the way it was, and 9% want the administration to scale it back. So the law has always been polarizing. When the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, was officially passed in 2010, it was considered the most dramatic overhaul of American health care in modern history, and we need it. But studies show that it has made some people's lives better. California is one of the ones whose Medicaid now is, Medi-Cal is 13 million people, 1/3 of the state's population. And it is, we're paying for that. Taking uninsured rates to an all-time low, it eliminated barriers to coverage and improved some hospital care, and fewer people with health emergencies went bankrupt. But there's a reason that former President Clinton called it Obamacare the craziest thing in the world, because that statement back, it has gotten more expensive, and too expensive for some. Plan and doctor choices are now limited. There's still a large part of the population that can't get affordable care because their states choose not to expand it. Even President Obama said he'd be open to fixes if the Republicans make it cheaper and better. So the repeal and replace...
Hey, everybody, after the...
Oh, sorry about that, Bill.
I thought the Secret Service was
coming in after us.
The Republicans who've tried to repeal it more than 60 times could take it up again in January, but it would be up to 2 years to change the health care process. And even with a Republican president, it's highly unlikely that Republicans will succeed or even want to succeed at completely changing it. What could it be? Well, you know, Trump said he wants something that works better, where your plan actually could be tailored and it wouldn't merely be a plan to use only if you get hit by a truck, which means a major catastrophe. Of course, he has an eye on cost. Well, of course, us in pharmacy are concerned about the cost of medications, because if he mandates mail care where the PBMs are getting all the money and they exclude the independents from it, he wants to keep some of the more popular parts. What's possible is in Congress, and what the public seems to love and hate about the plan. What many people like about it is the coverage of people with pre-existing conditions, and that's a huge part of that, and I don't see that going away. Before the Affordable Health Care Act, insurance companies could only give or deny insurance people to those who had pre-existing conditions like high blood pressure, asthma, diabetes, or even pregnancy. Companies could also charge higher premiums and limit the benefits they offer. Well, this throws a wrench in that, because 1 in 2 Americans has a pre-existing condition. And of those people, 25 million, 46%, were uninsured prior to Obamacare. The part of the law becomes one of the strongest aspects. And then 20-somethings on their parents' insurance could stay under their insurance until they're 26. Nearly 3 million uninsured young people got insurance under their patients' or parents' policies because of Obamacare. Trump would like to keep that part. It is an added cost. Also, they bought an end to Obamacare to lifetime limits on most plans. So prior to Obamacare, insurance companies could drop coverage when you were at your sickest point. So, I don't know, your insurance resources and companies could set a limit on what they would spend on your care, but anyone who accepted that limit on the hook to pay for their care out of the pocket, those costs become phenomenal. It extended limits on marketplace plans, and on most insurance plans, people got through their jobs. So I don't know what is going to happen. What I can tell you is that the first of the year, if you had Obamacare, you're still going to have Obamacare. And incentives started to move health care from a fee-for-service model to one that rewards quality of care. That's when we saw these drugs go from $100 or $200 to $2 and $3 and up to $80 and $90 and $100,000 for a year's supply. If they cure you for hepatitis C, it's $100,000. But there's plenty of parts of the law that others despise that will probably have to change. Obamacare is too expensive for too many in 2015. 46% of the insured adult population said they tried to get coverage but couldn't afford it. 46%, almost half. The vast majority who got Obamacare, some 85% got subsidies, such as Medicaid or Medi-Cal, which made it affordable. Those who didn't qualify for subsidies fees for the plans have the highest rate of premiums. The premiums skyrocketed at an average of 22% in 2017 coming up. The spikes are felt unevenly depending on location. In states where insurers pulled out of the marketplace, the prices went up significantly. In Oklahoma, for example, the average premium went up 69%. In Arizona, premiums more than doubled. And in Indiana, where there's more competition, the benchmark is 3% cheaper. The cost of deductibles also went up, meaning even people who did have coverage often won't go see a doctor. So it'll be a great health care plan, they hope, for less money. Some don't like being told by the government they have to have insurance. Over half the Republicans polled by Kaiser said they'd like to repeal that requirement. People also complained about the kind of insurance available in marketplaces, especially as the number of insurers shrunk. So the more insurers there are in the marketplace, the more the price becomes competitive. When they're not there, it's something completely different. So to keep costs down, marketplace insurers narrowed their provider networks, meaning people have fewer doctors to go to and fewer hospital options. And this shrinking pool of insurers means populations often have to investigate new plans when they enroll, filling out additional paperwork and researching options that have been a constant source of frustration. In 2016, this was how good the policies were. 43% of the customers returning to Obamacare switched policies. Some business groups have complained about the requirement that workplaces with 50 or more must offer health care or face fines. We have less than half of that, and we provide 100% medical benefits to our employees. We pay the premiums, and they pay for their co-pays and whatever those are going to be. So it's going to be really difficult. There's going to be a lot of blame, on both sides of the aisle, and we need to work together to get health care at its optimum effect in this country without such an abhorrible cost to have that health care. So our number is 263-5252, 263-5252. If you have any questions, you want to talk to us about what we're talking about, we'd be more than happy to answer your calls. I know a lot of you have sick kids or sick grandkids, and there's a huge change in the over-the-counter cough and cold medicine that are being prescribed to kids. I briefly talked about this a couple of weeks ago, that the cough and cold products lack support and efficacy, meaning they're not effective, and also safety data. So they're suggesting you use a saline drop or spray for congestion and Tylenol or ibuprofen for fever. The common cold's here. And I understand as a parent or a grandparent, and especially many of you who were together with your children and grandchildren over the holidays, you hate to see them suffering from these annoying upper respiratory and viral infections. Nobody wants to see a child be uncomfortable because of this, and we've always been able to fix those things before. But children experience more cold, about 6 to 10 annually, than adults, with each cold producing symptom of this cruddy nasal congestion and cough, runny nose, mild fever lasting up to 7 to 10 days, and it's going around right now. It may seem that your kids are continually sick because they get healed and then they go to daycare or they go to school and they come back and they give it to you again or they have it again. And we want children to feel better, and we naturally want to help. A frequent solution is over-the-counter medication, which are heavily advertised to treat many kinds of diseases, including colds, and a stroll down our pharmacy aisles will highlight the numerous over-the-counter products available to children and adults. But if you remember, we talked about many times when the National Institute of Health back in 1994 started studying other than healthy males for the effect on medications. It was a women's health study, and we started testing and getting data on females. And we found out that gender prescribing was much different for a female than it was for a male. The metabolism of the medications was much different for females. The kind of medications that had increased or decreased metabolism and higher and lower blood levels was considerably different. But one thing we've never tested are children, because they're not fully developed, and so we just assumed that if we lowered the adult dose by 25% or 75%, 50%, that according to their body weight, that we would be able to treat them effectively. And it's tempting to buy one or more of those products to help your child, because children younger than 12 years old, it's best not to use any of those medications, and the products lack a clinical study to support it. Kids aren't small adults. It's important to understand that they differ significantly with the adult population with drug efficiency and adverse effects. Over the past 30 years, we've learned a lot about pediatric pharmacology, meaning the study of medications with children, with drug action and behavior. And prior to this, and even today to some extent, we assumed that drugs function and behave similarly in children as in adults. Based on that assumption, physicians or health practitioners often reduce the amount of the drug to a child based on a proportion of the body weight in an adult. For example, if a provider would prescribe 50% of an adult dose for a child with 50% of the body weight of an adult, the efficacy or the efficiency of the over-the-counter cough and cold product active ingredient was assumed to be similar in children. However, we've learned that, and we continue to learn, that this strategy is not accurate and can be dangerous, especially with a vast majority of children prior to instituting the FDA's agreement or guidelines to do this. So a safe and effective drug dose and adult dose, how often it's given, is delivered from formal studies and evaluations in these pediatric-specific drug pharmacology or study of drugs. The over-the-counter drug products differ from prescription drug regulation because there isn't any regulation on over-the-counter products. In a major marketing study that began in '72, they started reviewing this. And pediatric cough and cold products have significantly regulatory changes in 2007. In 2008, they recommended that over-the-counter cough and cold products not be given to children younger than 2 years old. That trade group now has increased that to children younger than 4 years old. In addition, the reviews of that literature indicates that over-the-counter drug ingredients are actually ineffective in reducing cold symptoms in children. Over-the-counter and cold products can be dangerous as well, with more than 100 deaths of infants and young children solely related to the ingestion of those medications. So, although several doses of pediatric cough and cold products are unlikely to be toxic, they have described scenarios where the products were used inappropriately by administration of doses too large, doses given too frequently for the measurement of liquid doses, and the administration of the active ingredients in accumulative large doses. And to give you an example, Tylenol. Acetaminophen, the dropper dosage is actually, but because you're giving it in a dropper, is actually a higher dose than in a teaspoonful. So we actually had a physician yesterday, and this wasn't a pediatric physician, that had prescribed an iron product for a female patient that was used the concentration of the pediatric drop of iron and prescribed it in a tablespoonful. It was way, way overdosed on iron medication. So several calls to the physician, and we got that to be changed. But there are mistakes that are made by parents, considering the difficulty of actual measuring devices. We try to dispense a syringe instead of a spoon. In recent years, the codeine that was given in children's cough syrup, and I related on this show a couple of weeks ago, a physician had prescribed Tylenol and codeine for a pediatric patient, and I questioned it, and the physician wanted to still give that, but it's metabolized or broken up differently.
Bill?
Yes.
Oh, we had a call. If you're out there,
Okay.
please give us a call back.
Codeine doesn't work for some people and works too well for others, and it's actually metabolized to morphine. So you could imagine a pediatric patient that isn't fully developed, and even a child, that's 6 to 12 years old or 2 to 12 years old, taking a acetaminophen with codeine, and it's being broken down into morphine, and some can't break it down as well as others, and so it accumulates in the system. So codeine's been used for treating pain and cough in children and adults, and recent calculations, though, determined its clinical effectiveness for those use is inferior to other available drugs. So we've learned that amount of morphine produced from codeine and its breakdown in the liver can vary widely from person to person, and as a result of genetic differences, what we were just talked about. So 263-5252 if you want to give us a call. Sorry we missed you. Some individuals can convert codeine to a lot of morphine, which others may convert codeine to much less morphine. So evidence has accumulated over the past 10 years demonstrating that codeine can produce a significant decrease in breathing in some infants and children, and that becomes respiratory depression, where the lungs just fail to function and they don't oxygenate the brain and the heart just quits working. So more than 20 cases of fatal respiratory depression have been documented in infants and children just in this year. The Academy of Pediatrics published a warning on the dangers of administering codeine to infants and children, recommending that its use for all purposes in children include coughing and pain be limited or stopped. What should you do when your child suffers from a cold? Instead of reaching for an over-the-counter cough and cold medication, use a over-the-counter nasal saline drop like Ocean Spray. And you can also run a cold air humidifier in his or her room. Additionally, help loosen nasal congestion, or Tylenol or ibuprofen can be given as needed for fever. If your child is coughing enough to be uncomfortable or prevent nighttime sleep, try giving honey as long as he or she is 1 or older. That has been shown by several clinical studies. to be effective cough suppressant and is likely to be much safer than codeine and an over-the-counter cough and cold product. So these therapies have been endorsed by the American Academy of Pediatrics. When using these treatment in infants and children, it's always wise to speak with your child's pediatrician first. Remember, as an infant, we do not suggest honey being given as a cough suppressant over 1 or 2 years old, because it can harbor bacteria also if it's prevalent in the system. So before I go on to this next thing, I want to remind you all that there's still flu shots available at our pharmacy. I think the Hill Road store is out of it. We still have some at our location, and would be more than happy to give you your shot if you're over 65 and you need to get a pneumonia shot. Excuse me. It is covered under your Medicare. And if you've only had one of the shots, the Pneumovax 23 or the Prevnar 13, you need to get the other. Also, last week we talked about the Zostafax medication, which is for shingles. That's also something, if you're becoming in that age, although it's quite expensive, some Medicare D plans do pay for it, but you need to get that. And we talked about pertussis or whooping cough. You can get a Tdap shot, which is tetanus, and pertussis and diphtheria. We will be more than happy to give that to you, and you don't need a prescription for any of these. You can walk in the store and fill out a document, a piece of paper, and we can give you the shot. So no appointment needed, no prescription needed. So even if you get, you step on a nail or something and you need a tetanus shot, you don't have to pay for an office visit. You can come in and see us and take care of it for you. Like to remind you that we're experiencing, as we age, a lot of people are dying of cancer. And recently I've had a few friends that have left us because of that. And I saw an article in the New York Times yesterday that says what not to say to a cancer patient. And it kind of intrigued me because the most commonly asked question to a cancer patient or any sick person is, how are you doing? But as caring as that may seem, they're often not very helpful and maybe even harmful to people, because as a person that is interested in helping somebody do better with cancer, how do you answer that question? And especially if you're terminal or you're on chemotherapy, you know, if you're like me, you don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, so you say you're doing fine. You know, a diagnosis of cancer can be, to friends and family members, are probably very prompt and probably inappropriate, all being well-meaning comments. Some who don't know what to say simply want to avoid the cancer patient altogether and act that can be more painful if they said or did it wrong. Even though you're uncomfortable, there are things that you can do. For example, instead of saying, can I bring you, can I have an evening meal for you? Can I do something to clean the house? Can I just say, well, I'll be over Tuesday night with a meal for you. I'll come over tomorrow and clean your house, because I can tell you with me, if somebody offered to do that and they said, just call me when you want to, I never call. I don't know what it is, but we don't want to focus attention that this is an aggressive form of cancer and that we know you're not going to be able to do something. Words of opinion may work in the short run, but in the long run they can make the person feel guilty. And you're dealing with the fact that life could end shortly, and maybe that does not happen. So one of the best responses are, let me know what I can do to help, and or the ones that are used more often, which puts the burden on the patient, and instead, like I said, say, well, I'll be bringing dinner over tomorrow night. I'm coming to clean your house tomorrow. The sorority girls are going to come over and we're going to help you decorate for Christmas. A lot of different things. So many people use different ways to get to cancer people, and saying, "How are you doing?" Is not intended to rattle you or give you a high sense of vulnerability, but it's to show that you're caring. But often the greatest support comes from just witnessing what a person with cancer is experiencing. Sometimes only a presence of compassionate listening is necessary. But they came up with some things about what the don'ts are on these, and just a few of them. Don't make light of a patient's physical changes by saying you finally lost those extra pounds, which is probably what would happen with me. Don't talk about patients with other cancers that they did well and you're not doing well. Don't tell them they're lucky to have this kind of cancer, because believe me, there isn't any kind of cancer that you're lucky to have. Don't say, "How do you feel?" because you can't possibly know how they feel, and they will tell you something to not let them know how cancer is affecting you. Don't suggest that the lifestyle is, for example, if you're with somebody and they've smoked for 50 years, don't tell them if you hadn't smoked, you wouldn't have got it. Don't preach to the patient about being positive. And I kind of disagree with this. When I see a patient that's very positive about their outcome, I tell them that has a lot to do with your success. And it can induce feelings of guilt if things aren't going well. So it's better to say, "I'm here for you no matter what happens." So and don't ask them, "Is this stage 4? How much time do you have left?" Don't burden the people with your own feelings or distress, although it's fine to say, "I'm sorry this happened to you." You feel overwhelmed by the process. It's better to say, "I don't know what to say," than to say nothing at all, or that you can just feel compassionate for them being here. I'd like to remind you that this is the Christmas season, and be positive about Christmas. And we will have a recorded show next week, and then I'll be back the rest of the year. So I'd like to remind you we're North Lake Medical Pharmacies with 2 locations for you at 5136 Hill Road East across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital. Call us there at 263-6192. Or outside the Bruno Shop Smart at 347 Lakeport Boulevard. Call us there at 263-1328. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Bill. We'll see everybody back here for a recorded show next Wednesday, and then Bill will be live in the studio the Wednesday after that. So be sure to join us every Wednesday for Health Talk at 10 a.m. on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM, KXPX Lakeport.